Have you ever had that feeling that everything you believe about yourself might not be the absolute truth? Well, get ready. What you're about to discover in this video could completely change your perception of who you are. The idea that you were born as a unique individual, separate from the world, might be the biggest illusion we've ever been taught. In fact, you were never born, and you'll never die. Sound crazy? Maybe. But what if this statement is the path to the freedom you've been searching for? Throughout this video, we'll explore how the you know is a construct. Yes, a narrative shaped by memories, beliefs, and conditioning. This may sound uncomfortable, but that's where the great opportunity lies, to dissolve the bonds of a limited identity and connect with something much bigger, something infinite. This realization will open doors to a level of freedom and harmony that you never imagined possible. But be careful. What you're about to hear here is not for those who are just looking for comfort or validation. It's for those who have the courage to go beyond the surface, to question certainties and dive into the unknown. So, if you want to take this courageous step, take the opportunity to subscribe to the channel and activate notifications now. That way, you won't miss any of the upcoming content that can transform your life. From the very first steps in the world, people are conditioned to believe that they have a fixed identity, something solid that defines them. This I seems to be the core of who we are, but is it real? When we look deeper, we realize that it is just a reflection of social conditioning, accumulated memories, and the stories we tell ourselves. Think, for example, of a symbol that you have carried since childhood, a nickname, a characteristic that defined you. How many times has this trapped you in a role that no longer makes sense? Thus, the I becomes a labyrinth of thoughts and emotions, disconnected from our true essence. This illusion is reinforced by something even more subtle, the belief that we are independent, separate from the whole. But if we look closely, what we call self is a mosaic of external influences. From the first smiles we receive to the values we absorb throughout life, our identity is shaped like a sculptor shapes clay. This is where the challenge begins. How do we rebuild the inner temple when all we have is a facade made of memories? The answer lies not in denying the self, but in questioning it with honesty and courage. The I acts like a mask. It is useful in everyday situations, but it becomes a problem when we forget that it is just that, a mask. Imagine a simple situation, such as reacting to criticism. The I feels attacked, defends itself, or attacks back. And yet, when we observe the situation calmly, we realize that the criticism does not affect our essence, but rather the ego, this fragile and reactive construct. This exercise in self-mastery is like balancing the light and darkness within ourselves, recognizing that the true power comes from the consciousness behind the mask. But how can we identify this awareness? One practical way is to observe the thoughts that arise, like clouds in the sky. They pass, come and go, but the observer remains unchanged. This constant presence is who we really are, an unchanging point of light amidst the storms of thought, emotion, and action. This simple practice can be done in moments of silence. Sit for a few minutes, observe your breathing, and notice how the I disappears when it is not fed by judgments. This deconstruction of the self is a work that requires resilience, because it challenges all the beliefs we have about ourselves. It is like dismantling a puzzle, piece by piece, until only emptiness remains. An emptiness that, paradoxically, is filled with wisdom and integrity. It is not a process of rejection, but of understanding. A process that invites harmony between what we think we are and what we really are. By exploring this truth, the opportunity to free oneself arises. And this is where the next step reveals itself. How to understand that this illusory individuality is just a wave in the vast ocean of infinite consciousness. The answer is closer than we imagine, waiting to be discovered. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate notifications to continue this journey of self-knowledge and personal growth. The next step may be the key you were looking for. Imagine standing at the ocean, watching the waves roll in, one after the other. Each wave seems to have a life of its own, a unique movement and purpose. But deep down, they are not separate from the ocean. They are just momentary expressions of something much larger. This is our individuality. We believe ourselves to be separate entities, but in fact, we are like these waves, fleeting manifestations of the infinite consciousness that underlies all existence. This symbol of the wave and the ocean helps us see the interconnection between essence and form. Common thinking would have us believe that waves have a beginning and an end, but they are merely changes on the surface of the ocean. Likewise, our lives may seem linear, marked by births and deaths, ups and downs, but who we really are is unchanging and eternal. The inner temple, that sacred space where true wisdom resides, is unaffected by external changes. When we understand this, we begin to build a foundation of balance that helps us deal with life's storms. The idea that we are connected to the whole is not just poetic, it is practical. Imagine, for example, a moment when you felt deeply inspired. That inspiration didn't come from you alone. It came from something bigger, as if the ocean had sent its energy to shape that particular wave. This realization brings harmony and reduces the weight of individual concerns, because it makes us realize that we are not alone. The universe sustains us, even when we cannot see it. This connection also teaches us about light and darkness. Just as the ocean is influenced by the tides and winds, our consciousness is impacted by thoughts, emotions, and actions. However, these movements are fleeting. The essence of the ocean remains unchanged, as does our essence. Resilience is not about resisting the waves, but learning to surf them, using each experience as a path to self-knowledge. The practice of perceiving yourself as part of this infinite ocean can be started in a simple way. In a moment of silence, visualize yourself as a wave emerging, growing, and returning to the vastness of the ocean. Feel how this image dissolves attachment to the I and reveals the wisdom present in the interconnection with all things. This exercise strengthens integrity, as it shows us that, even though we are unique, we are inseparable from the whole. And it is precisely when we understand this relationship with the whole that a new question arises. What prevents us from living fully connected to our true essence? To do this, it is necessary to explore the role of the ego and how it obscures this universal truth. Don't forget that, just as the waves are always returning to the ocean, the next step on this journey is closer than it seems. The ego is like a mask we wear every day, shaped by external symbols, past memories, and social expectations. It gives us an identity, a self to navigate the world, but at the same time, it limits us. Think of the ego as a filter between you and reality. It interprets the world in its own way, often distorting the truth. This mask leads us to believe that we are nothing more than our thoughts, emotions, and actions, but this belief obscures the deeper awareness that is the basis of who we really are. Consciousness, on the other hand, is like a silent observer, always present but rarely noticed. While the ego reacts and judges, consciousness simply witnesses. Think of times when you have felt fully present, such as watching a sunset or listening to music that touches your soul. In those moments, the ego recedes, and you feel a connection to something greater. This state of presence is what many call the balance between light and dark, a state where judgment gives way to harmony. The ego, however, is not the villain. It is a necessary tool for survival in the material world, but it should not be confused with who you really are. It is like mistaking the reflection in the mirror for your own face. Wisdom lies in realizing that the ego is fleeting, while consciousness is eternal. A practical example of this is the practice of meditation. By observing your thoughts without judging them, You begin to notice the difference between the mind stream and the consciousness that observes it. Over time, this self-awareness dissolves the over-identification with the ego and reveals the inner temple, a space where true essence can be found. This journey requires resilience, because the ego does not disappear easily. It clings to beliefs, memories, and even suffering. But each small moment of clarity is a step toward freedom. And this freedom is not about rejecting the ego, but rather integrating it wisely, allowing it to serve the greater consciousness. Practicing ego detachment is essential to achieving this harmony. For example, try asking yourself, "Who am I without my thoughts?" This type of reflection may seem challenging at first, but with practice, it opens up space for profound insights. You begin to realize that behind the layers of thought and emotion, there is a serene and unchanging observer. This is the state of wholeness, where your essence is aligned with the whole. And as the ego loses its power, an even more intriguing question arises. If we are not the ego, who are we really? This is the invitation to the next step of the journey, where freeing ourselves from separate identity reveals a new dimension of freedom. Freeing ourselves from the idea of a separate self is like opening a window onto an infinite horizon, where the rigid boundaries that define who we are begin to dissolve. When we let go of this fixed identity, we realize that much of our pain and suffering comes precisely from our attachment to who we think we are. Imagine a leaf floating in a river. When it tries to resist the current, it suffers. But when it surrenders to the flow, it finds peace. In the same way, letting go of absolute control over our identity allows life to flow with more harmony and wisdom. This liberation is not about rejecting our personality or erasing the experiences that have shaped us. Rather, it is about understanding that we are much more than these superficial layers. Think of times when you have felt deeply connected to something greater, such as a community, nature, or even a moment of meditative silence. These moments reveal that separation is an illusion. We are like drops of water in the vast ocean of existence. Connection to this whole brings balance and resilience, as it dissolves the suffering generated by the idea of isolation. By questioning this limited identity, space opens up for true inner freedom. Simple practices, such as observing your emotions without identifying with them, can help in this process. For example, if you are feeling angry, instead of saying, "I am angry," try thinking, "There is anger in me right now." This small adjustment in thinking completely changes your relationship with the emotion, allowing you to observe it without being consumed by it. The wisdom lies in recognizing that emotions are like clouds. They pass, but the sky of consciousness remains. When you let go of attachment to separate identity, a sense of harmony with all things arises. There is no longer a need to prove anything to the world or to yourself. This new way of being is not apathetic or indifferent, but deeply integrated and purposeful. You begin to act no longer out of fear or a desire for validation, but from a place of authenticity and integrity. This is where the inner temple truly blossoms, as a space of undisturbed peace within you. This freedom also impacts the way we relate to others. By letting go of the idea of me against the world, we realize that everyone faces the same internal struggles, the symbols of success or failure we carry, the battles between thought, emotion, and action. This understanding generates compassion, both for oneself and for others, creating a cycle of harmony that transforms our experience of life. But the big question remains: how do we cultivate this freedom in a world full of distractions and challenges? The answer begins with practice and a commitment to exploring what lies beyond the ego. And this is where the tools that connect us to unchanging consciousness come in, a topic that will be explored in more depth in the next step of the journey. The journey to explore unchanging consciousness does not require elaborate rituals, but rather accessible and consistent practices that reveal the balance hidden in our inner temple. A simple yet profound exercise is to observe your thoughts as if they were clouds passing through the sky. Instead of fighting them or trying to stop them, simply observe them. Ask yourself, who is thinking these thoughts? This question does not seek a direct answer, but rather a state of reflection that dissolves automatic identification with the ego. Another powerful practice is breath-based meditation. Choose a quiet time of day, close your eyes, and bring your attention to the natural rhythm of your breathing. Imagine that each inhale brings light and balance to your inner temple, while each exhale dissolves old patterns that no longer serve your personal growth. This exercise, as simple as it may seem, helps you cultivate self-mastery, allowing you to react less to external stimuli and live with greater integrity. Some practices can be done in the midst of daily activities. For example, when you feel an intense emotion, such as frustration or sadness, stop for a moment and locate the sensation in your body. Ask yourself, where is this feeling? In your chest? In your stomach? This helps to anchor the emotion in the present moment, breaking the cycle of automatic reaction. It's like creating space within yourself for the emotion to naturally dissolve, rather than turning into prolonged suffering. More advanced practices, such as guided contemplation, also have their place. Imagine that you are standing in front of a symbolic mirror that reflects not only your physical form, but also your essence. Ask yourself, who am I beyond this reflection? Visualize the mirror expanding, connecting you with infinity. These mental images help to deconstruct the idea of separation and cultivate a state of unity with the whole. A key aspect of these practices is resilience. Results may not always be immediate, but consistent repetition is key to progress. Think of it like building a temple. Each brick laid with patience and dedication strengthens the structure. Likewise, each daily practice builds the foundation of self-knowledge, allowing you to live with greater wisdom and balance, even in the face of challenges. And of course, these practices are not ends in themselves, but gateways to something much greater. They help us recognize that we are the consciousness behind our thoughts, emotions, and actions. And by accessing this state, we connect with a timeless wisdom that illuminates both the light and the darkness in our lives. Now, you are ready to dive even deeper into the essence of who we are. Now that you have had the opportunity to explore and reflect on the true essence of self, the question is, what will you do with this knowledge? Will you continue to live under the illusion of a separate self, or will you allow yourself to connect with the vastness of consciousness that has always been available to you? True freedom comes when we let go of attachment to self and recognize the interconnectedness of all things. As you apply this knowledge to your life, remember, the journey of self-knowledge does not happen overnight. It is an ongoing process of observation, acceptance, and transformation. You have the power to choose how you respond to every thought, emotion, and action. This requires practice, patience, and resilience, but the results are worth every effort. Now, imagine the impact of applying this power to all aspects of your life. More balance, more harmony, more wisdom. If you are ready to break free from the limitations imposed by this false identity, then start now. Ask yourself, how can I free myself from the conditioning that defines who I am? The simple act of reflecting on this is already a huge step towards change. Don't underestimate the power of your inner journey. Finally, if you are truly committed to change, be sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. With each video, you will receive more insights and practical tools to continue your path of personal and spiritual growth. And remember, you are never alone in this process. We are all together on the same journey.